Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, you're checking out an updated solo PVE werewolf build for the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor chapter. In this video, I'll be going over all the werewolf skill changes and how to make them work on the solo build. And then I'll be recommending some strong gear set options that will work for solo survivability, damage, healing, and sustain. First, we'll talk about champion points, and we'll have some gameplay at the end, so make sure you stick around for the entire video. So here we go, solo werewolf update for the Greymoor chapter. Let's get started. All right, everybody, here we are back on the werewolf for the Greymoor chapter in ESO, a solo werewolf build, in fact. So just keep that in mind. This won't be a pure DPS build. We'll be checking out some morphs that provide better survivability, better healing. We'll be talking about damage shields as well. Basically everything you need to survive on a solo werewolf build for things like solo dungeon runs, world bosses, anything that you want to try on your werewolf setup. So let's go ahead and transform and jump into the stats. Might as well use my potion as well. So sitting at about 15k max magicka, 20k max health, 41k max stamina, magicka recovery 700, health recovery 1000, stamina recovery 869. Weapon damage is 4368. That is with major brutality, which is now passive on the werewolf. We'll talk about some of those passives in a few minutes, but that's pretty good. And then weapon critical, almost 42%. Spell and physical resistance, not bad, about 22,000. We do have some damage reduction now with the new werewolf skills as well, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So the build is actually a lot tankier than it looks. 64 points into stamina, of course. As far as the Mundus Stone, I do recommend the Lover Mundus for a solo werewolf build. That's just to help with the extra physical penetration. That also means our heal, which is based off our damage, is going to heal us for more, so that's important. Bewitched Sugar Skulls is going to be your best in slot food. That's because we need all our resources, max stamina, max magicka, and max health. Plus the extra health recovery is definitely very nice. And then we do have passive major brutality, major savagery. We'll talk about where we get those from in a few minutes. Potions I mentioned earlier, that's going to be the Tri-Stat Potion. That's because we do get that passive major brutality and savagery, so we don't have to worry about that. That frees up our potion for some extra buffs there. And in terms of the race for a werewolf build, I think it's really up to you. I actually wanted to try out Imperial on this build. I think Imperial is a pretty solid choice if you have access to that race, because you get 2,000 extra max health, 2,000 extra max stamina, and then the Red Diamond passive is very good for werewolves as well. You can see we have cost reduction of all our abilities by 3%. That includes the werewolf ultimate. And then when we deal direct damage, which is basically all the time, we do get a 333 heal plus stamina and magicka restore. So that's going to be really good for the cost reduction of all our abilities and the sustain back that we get from that passive. Like I mentioned, other choices are fine. Orc is going to give you more weapon damage. Dark Elf as well. Even Nord is kind of nice for the extra ultimate when you're out of werewolf form. So check those options out. Then in terms of your class that you're going to use on this build, any class is fine. I do recommend Stamina Sorcerer though. We have lots of cost reduction passives on the Stamina Sorcerer class, which is going to reduce the cost of the Werewolf Transformation Ultimate, as well as all your abilities. So that's what I recommend as the class. So I think that covers the basics. Let's go ahead and jump right into the gear sets next. I'm going to start off with what I think is a very powerful set on the werewolf, and that's going to be Essence Thief. If you're not familiar with this set, it does come from the Imperial City DLC from the White Gold Tower dungeon. So it is a dungeon set that requires a little bit of farming. But check out what this does for us. We get 2 max stamina bonuses, 1 weapon damage bonus, and then on the 5-piece here, dealing damage with a light or heavy attack draws essence from the enemy. This heals you for 3,900 health, restores 3,900 stamina, and increases your damage done by 10% for 10 seconds. This does have a 10-second cooldown, which means basically you have a very good uptime on that 10% damage done. Plus, you do get the extra heal and the stamina sustain every 10 seconds as well. So for me, I think this checks all the boxes for a werewolf build. We do suffer a little bit from lack of healing. We do suffer from some sustain issues just by the way our skills work. And then having the 10% extra damage is a no-brainer in my opinion. So this set does offer basically everything that we need. On top of that, it is a medium armor set, so we're going to get those extra medium armor passives. And I'm just running this 5 pieces on the body. That's what I would recommend if you can pick this up. So medium chest, medium waist, hands, legs, and feet. Obviously, Divines will be your best in slot trait. And then we want to enchant everything with max stamina. Now, if you don't have access to this, but you want something that's a little bit similar, something that you can actually farm by yourself, I would also recommend the Hunt Leader set from Maelstrom Arena. This is very similar, you guys. Actually, the 2 through 4 piece bonuses are exactly the same. And the 5 piece bonus is also very similar. When your pets attack an enemy in the last 10 seconds, you heal and you restore stamina. This can happen every 5 seconds. So the health back on this set is actually a little bit better. The stamina sustain is not quite as good, but this set should be a lot easier to get. So if you're looking for something that's very similar to this, has similar health and stamina restore, then check out Hunt Leader. That is from Maelstrom Arena. You can farm that on normal mode too. You don't have to do veteran. So check that out. For my second 5-piece set, I just wanted basically a pure damage set. For that, the easiest thing is going to still be New Moon Acolyte on your weapon and your jewelry. So for this, I just picked out a New Moon Acolyte Greatsword. This is a crafted set from the Dragonhold DLC. This is 9 traits to craft, but you can also pick this up very easily, I find, in Guild Traders. Just search for these pieces and you should be able to find them. So again, I'm going with a 2-hand Greatsword. Why 2-hand? Why not dual wield or something else? Well, for me, 2-hand is nice because this offers the best enchantment possible. You can see for my enchant, I actually went with the Damage Shield enchant, which is giving me over 5k damage shield every 5 seconds. Now, again, this is only for soloing, and I find this to be very, very good enchant for a solo build. That's a great damage shield, and yes, your enchants do work while you're in werewolf form. You don't have to do anything, you just light or heavy attack as you normally would, and you're going to get that free damage shield to proc every 5 seconds, so it's really, really good on the solo werewolf build. If you're going for more of a DPS setup, then obviously you would choose something that can do a little bit more damage, like a poison or disease enchant, or maybe even poisons. You could run a double dot health poison. That would be a nice option as well. And then why the 2-hander? Well, remember that 2-handed enchants are actually double the value of a single weapon enchant. So this is going to give us a larger value on the damage shield, plus the fact that I went with the infused trait here, again, just to boost that damage shield as high as possible. That's my preference for survivability. Like I said, you can run other things here, different enchants. You can even switch this up for Nirnhond if you want more damage. So that's what I would recommend there on your front bar. And then just 3 pieces of New Moon Acolyte jewelry, 1 bloodthirsty and 2 infused. And then I think the enchantments here are important. So I have 2 weapon damage and 1 reduced cost of stamina abilities. This on the infused ring is going to be very strong. So other options, if you don't have access to New Moon Acolyte, something that you could farm yourself, I would definitely recommend Briarheart. This is from the Hrothgar DLC. This gives you a similar amount of weapon damage, 450 weapon damage for 10 seconds when you do a critical strike. But this also heals you back, so a little bit of health, not too much, but 378 health is definitely going to help with the overall healing potential of the werewolf. So Briarheart is always a good set to check out for any werewolf build. Keep that in mind. Another very strong set, if you can get it, though it is a dungeon DLC, it's going to be the Zogvin's Warband set. This gives you 2 lines of weapon critical, physical penetration, and then when you deal critical damage, you gain stacks of precision, giving you tons of weapon critical, plus minor force at 10 stacks. So that's a really nice buff. There's actually no way to get that on the werewolf class skills itself. So this is going to be really nice to increase your overall damage. So those are some options there. Now, in terms of the monster set, I think for this particular build, Celine's going to be very strong. It's actually getting a small buff for the Greymoor chapter. It adds 1-piece stamina bonus here and almost 20k physical damage every 4 seconds. That's a really strong damage proc, you guys. It procs from melee damage. So basically everything we do in our toolkit, that's going to give us a chance to proc Celine. So very high uptime on this, very strong. I'm going to recommend at least 1 heavy piece here on the monster set. So heavy helmet with a health enchant will not be too bad. That's going to help get your health close to 20k. And for the shoulders, I am just running medium. So the basic setup here is 6 pieces of medium and 1 heavy. That's what I would recommend. You can also do 5 medium, 1 heavy, and then 1 light shoulder piece. If you want a little bit of extra, the 2% extra max stats from Undaunted, but I prefer the extra medium armor passives from running 6 medium on this build. Last but not least, the back bar weapon. Doesn't matter a whole lot in terms of this build. While we're in werewolf form, obviously this is completely useless, but I just recommend any one-hand and shield. I have a Maelstrom one-hand and shield equipped currently. The reason I would recommend this for your back bar is you can run Heroic Slash to get that minor heroism buff and get your werewolf form back a little bit faster. Again, any one-handed shield, even a basic crafted one-handed shield is going to be fine for that. So that's our gear sets. Let's go ahead and talk about the skills next. I will start with the werewolf skills. Starting off with Feral Pounce. That's going to be the first basic ability from the werewolf skill line. This does a good amount of physical damage, and it is a gap closer. It's a leap. So the new change for the Greymoor chapter is this actually has a secondary effect where you can cast it again within 5 seconds to cast Feral Carnage. Feral Carnage is basically a damage over time effect, a bleed effect that does ramping execute damage. Now it does sound very strong, this idea of 450% more damage, but I found the damage not to be super impressive. You don't want to cast this all the time, especially not at, like full health against a world boss or something like that. The cost of this ability, over 3k stamina, is kind of the downside of it. So I do like it when an enemy is getting low health. That's where you'll really start to see that ramping up of the execute damage, the 450%. So I would probably wait in a solo fight to cast this to about 20 or 30% of a boss's health before I actually start using that Feral Carnage effect. But obviously you can use it for like overland and clearing dungeons because it is a leap. That's going to help you close the distance between you and your target a lot faster. And I do like the Feral Pounce morph because this gives us extra time in our werewolf form. So you can see there at the bottom, dealing damage with either attack restores 100 stamina and extends your werewolf transformation by 1 second. So that's going to be really important, especially if you're trying to solo a dungeon or something like that. You want to keep your werewolf form up as long as possible. So that's why I prefer this morph. The other morph is okay. It's going to be better for like group DPS because it actually gives you a small weapon damage bonus. Second ability, that's going to be Hircine's Fortitude, and this is our heal as a werewolf. You can see it still costs about 5,000 max magicka, but it is doing a decent heal, about 10k healing that can crit as well. Now I've chosen this morph, the Hircine's Fortitude morph, because it does have the stronger heal. If you choose the other morph, you will have lower healing, though you do get the major berserk buff for 5 seconds. I just found that the duration on that buff is so short, plus the cost is so much, over 5k max magicka. I wasn't really taking good advantage of that buff, and I just want to use this more as a burst heal. So that's why the Fortitude morph is going to be kind of the better option for soloing, in my opinion. You also do get some nice stamina and possibly health recovery off of this based on your missing health. You can see up to 666 bonus recoveries there, which is going to be nice for this morph. Now, either morph also has a new effect in the Greymoor chapter. That's if you're at full health, you instead restore 3,000 stamina. Now, that's going to be helpful for our sustain because we can just dump some magic if we're at full magic and we happen to be at max health, then just cast it once or even twice to get that stamina back really quick. It's almost like the werewolf version of Dark Deal. So I do like that effect a lot. It does help with sustain. Plus, again, in the Greymoor chapter, the passive bonus here, while slotted, you get Major Brutality. So that increases your weapon damage by 20%. That means we don't have to run those weapon power potions. We just need to slot this, and then we have that buff for free, which is really, really nice. Next up, Deafening Roar. That's going to be the third ability from the werewolf skill line. So this is an AoE fear, but it does bring a lot of extra debuffs to the table. You can see this sets your targets off balance for 7 seconds. You also apply Major Fracture and Minor Maim. So that's the major resistance debuff, right? 50 to 80 less physical resistance. And then Minor Maim is excellent, you guys, for soloing. That decreases an enemy's damage done to you by 15% for 10 seconds. So this is absolutely essential. You need to cast this every 10 seconds to maintain those buffs. Also, you can see new in Greymoor, you get the Major Savagery buff while slotted, so that increases your weapon critical by about 10%, which is really good too. In terms of the off balance, this isn't really amping up our damage too much because I'm not spec'd for off balance damage, but keep in mind that an enemy that's set off balance, even a boss enemy, if you hit them with a heavy attack, you restore double the amount of stamina. So that's something that you want to look for too. Most bosses do have a cooldown on off balance, so you won't be able to recast this every 7 seconds. The boss will go on cooldown, but you should have off balance up enough where you can hit them with a heavy attack when you need to get sustain back. So just keep that in mind if you're having any trouble sustaining on the werewolf. Next up, Howl of Agony. This is our main DPS spammable ability. You can see it's pretty low cost, 2204 max stamina. To cast this, it's doing about 15k damage right now. The Howl of Agony morph does do 25% more damage to feared enemies or enemies who are facing you. Now, currently there is a bug on the PTS where I'm not seeing that extra damage. Hopefully that'll be fixed by the time the Greymoor chapter goes live. But again, this is our basic spammable ability to do damage on the build. Last but not least, we've got Claws of Life. I went with the healing morph for this ability. You can see this does good upfront disease damage as well as disease damage over time. And you get healed for 100% of the damage over time caused. Something to keep in mind with this is you can actually hit multiple targets with this. It is an AoE. So if you are grinding through a dungeon or you're maybe grinding experience, gold, something like that, make sure you step back just a little bit and hit as many enemies as you can with the swipe. Here's what it looks like. So you can see it. There's a pretty big radius on this. And so if you're facing multiple enemies, it's going to be important to hit as many enemies as you can because that heal actually stacks. Now, in terms of the ultimate, you can probably see that I am using my buddy Direwolves here. So I did go with the Pack Leader morph, which did get some interesting buffs in the Greymoor chapter, so let's check that out. How is Pack Leader different? You still get the max stamina increased by 30%, but then check this out. You take 10% less damage. So remember, our resistances were not super high. This is a medium armor setup, but you do have that 10% bonus damage mitigation right off the bat. So this is going to be very good for soloing, even for tanking on your werewolf build if you're interested in doing that. Plus, you get the 2 direwolves. Now, another new effect is you also grant yourself and nearby allies minor courage, increasing the weapon and spell damage of you and your group by 129. I believe that's still bugged on the PTS right now, but once that gets fixed, that's going to be an amazing group buff. And it says it also buffs yourself, so that's going to increase your own weapon damage, which is going to be really nice. You still get the stamina recovery, so that's good. Now, a little side note about the direwolves. Yes, they do damage, a small amount of damage to your enemies, but they actually help you out in terms of passives. And in particular, this last passive, Call of the Pack, this reduces the cost of remaining in your werewolf transformation by 20%. So that means you stay in your werewolf form longer for each werewolf or direwolf in your group, including yourself, up to 80%. So since we have 2 direwolves and ourselves, that's going to reduce our cost by 60% even when solo. So that's another nice benefit of the Pack Leader morph. I think, most people want to try to stay in werewolf as long as possible, at least for a solo build. So the direwolves are really going to help with that due to this passive. So keep that in mind. The other morph of the ultimate is okay for soloing. I see it more as like a group DPS morph option though, because it does increase bleed damage and heavy attack damage. But of course, that's just my opinion. The rest of the passives, if you're familiar with Werewolf, they're basically the same. Devour, you can devour corpses to increase your time. In the Werewolf form, you do have the increased movement speed, increased stamina restore on your heavy attacks still. Blood Rage, this does give you some werewolf time added back to your timer when you do damage. Blood Moon, that's how you pass this on. And then Savage Strength remain the same. This is how we're getting the bonus weapon damage and the bonus 10k spell and physical resistance. So that is the skills, that's the sets, that's the basic setup. Let me go ahead and show you the skills for non-werewolf form if you're interested. Again, on the Stamina Sorcerer. Very basic two-handed setup. Nothing really special here on the front bar. We're doing Reverse Slice from the two-handed skill line. That's going to give us bonus execute damage as well as AoE. Then we're running Brawler, also from the two-handed skill line. That's just some extra AoE as well as damage shield. Running Bound Armaments on the front bar for the extra max stamina, 8%. Your light attacks deal 10% more damage, so that's a great passive buff. Dizzying Swing, also from the two-handed skill line, just for a single target damage ability. Also sets your enemies off balance. Camo Hunter, just for the passive savagery here, major savagery. Plus minor berserk for 5 seconds when you do crit damage. That's really nice. Of course, you got the werewolf slotted on the front bar. Back bar we mentioned, just sword and shield. Barb Trap, just a basic dot from the Fighters Guild skill line. So that's the last ability that you get there. It does give you that nice minor force buff while you have that active, so that is good. Mentioned Heroic Slash just to give us that minor heroism buff whenever we want. This will help get your werewolf form back up once it goes down. So that's pretty nice to have. Dark Deal from the Dark Magic skill line. It's just a good sustain tool. It also gives you some healing back if you need a quick burst heal. Dark Deal is nice for that. And then just our two Stamsork buffs. We've got Hurricane, of course, from the Storm Calling skill line. That's the second ability there. It gives you major resolve, minor expedition, so extra armor, extra movement speed. This is going to be really nice when you're not in werewolf form, just to make you a little bit tankier, as well as do some nice AoE damage. And of course, we're running Crit Surge. That is also from Storm Calling. This gives us major brutality, so that 20% weapon damage buff, which we also get while in werewolf form. Plus, it gives us some nice healing, so 3,300 health back every 1 second. Keep in mind that you can cast this before you transform, and that buff, as well as Hurricane if you want, those will remain on while you're in werewolf form until they expire, so that's a nice little trick before you transform. And then for the backbar ultimate, you're not really going to be using this, of course, because you're focused on your werewolf transformation, but I am using the Greater Storm Atronach from Daedric Summoning, just for some extra passives there on the backbar. So that is really it. We can talk about champion points, of course. This is what I'm going to recommend for soloing at 810 champion points. And I'll talk about where you can focus if you have less than the max. So 23 into Warlord, 23 into Sprinter, 43 into Tenacity, 43 Healthy, 49 Arcanist, 43 Mooncalf, 23 into Shadow Ward, and 23 into Tumbling. Really the focus should be on the Thief tree here, focusing on Tenacity for the sustain as well as your recoveries. You want to prioritize these because you need all those as a werewolf. For blue CP, I'm really focused on Physical Weapon Expert because you get so much bonus here, and this does affect both your light and heavy attacks as a Stamsorc, as well as your basic attacks in werewolf form. Light and heavy attacks, you can see 25% bonus damage on those for only 47 points. So that's a really nice CP node to focus on. Master Arms, of course, too, for that direct damage, 66 there. 51 Thaumaturge, 28 Precise Strikes, 29 Piercing, 49 into Mighty. Again, I would focus majority of my points here in the Mage, Physical Weapon Expert, Master Arms, and then some into Thaumaturge as well for your dots. In the red tree, 81 into Ironclad, 1 left over for medium armor focus, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 34 into Thick-Skinned, 56 into Bastion. This is only going to affect your Damage Shield enchant on your werewolf form and your front bar as a Stamsorc. So if you're not using that glyph, you can definitely drop those points. Hardy, Elemental Defender, and Thick-Skinned are definitely recommended, as well as many points as you can into Ironclad, especially if you're soloing, just to reduce that direct damage. If you're curious about the outfit style, as far as the Stamina Sorcerer, this is all medium Daedric armor. I just dyed it black and gray. And then the helmet is the Heavy Huntsman. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this solo werewolf build update for the Greymoor chapter. Hope you guys liked this and you found it informative. Of course, if you did, don't forget to crush that like button for me. It absolutely helps out the channel. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more build videos just like this. And make sure you turn those notifications on so you don't miss anything. I do weekly build videos, guides, and discussions right here on YouTube. Of course, you can check out my social media. There's links for that, as well as that juicy join button down below. You can learn more about becoming a channel member and supporting HTM. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're staying safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.